We'll be starting in 1 minute. I love when the music goes out right when I start the show. It's like the best feeling. It's like, I have nailed it. It went on at the same time. So welcome to your next stop live here on Fireside. Excited to share with you guys the unstoppable mom brain. And I'm going to say, Priyanka, I said that correctly, right?
Yep,
I'm going to say
you got it.
I'm going to say your
You
first
got
name,
it.
but I'm going to have you say your last name.
Yeah. So I am Priyanka Venugopal, and you got it right, like on the very first try.
Well, I've been saying it in my head. So, and
Yeah,
it's actually Dr. Priyanka
that's right. Yes.
Venugopal, and I know I said that wrong, but
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
listeners all know your next to stop. That when I
Yeah.
pronounce names, sometimes it brings comedy because
Yeah.
of my dyslexia. I mispronounce people's names. So,
Totally
welcome
fine.
to Fireside. I know this is your first time on here,
Yeah.
which is
It
really
is.
fun. Everyone, yeah, it's fun. So what I'm going to take people through a little bit right now is anyone that's in the audience, Anthony and Gabrielle, how are you? And I know people. I just had a bunch of people saying we're coming, but they'll catch the replay or they can catch up, which is really fun. You can catch up if you're in the room. But if you are listening here live on LinkedIn, hi, I see a bunch of people in there. If you're on Facebook, if you're Twitch or YouTube, welcome. I'm bringing you another really fun guest to your next stop live here on Fireside. So anyone that is in the room, if you guys can go down to those two little lines at the bottom and click on it, and you'll see where it says broadcast. It will share with followers, which I will do right now. So if you guys got that just from me in a second, that is me sharing with the followers. But then there's also something that says broadcast to the world. And you can actually go there and send it to, it will pop up. It's almost like pictures. You can send it to Facebook. You can send it to any person on your email list. You can also send it to people text wise. But what's really fun is that someone can be listening in the app from where you're sending, but we don't see them in the room. So there's people in there. The people in the room can participate, but the people outside the app can just listen and kind of be a part of the show. So it is a really fun kind of way that we're doing this. So welcome. And I just want to get right into this. So Priyanka, can you let everyone know a little bit about you, where you grew up, where you
Yeah.
went to university? You know, obviously you're a
Yeah.
doctor, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to say if you went to
Yeah.
university, where you
Yeah.
went to university and where you got your undergrad and medical
Yeah.
school and all of that. If you can give us a little insight.
Yeah. I mean, there's many layers, many years of that. Yeah. So I am a board certified OBGYN. And as you pronounce perfectly, my name is Priyanka Venugopal. And I grew up in New Jersey. So most of my life, I grew up near like central Jersey. And I was one of those kids. I like to really describe myself as one of those kids that, I mean, either you're going to love this or hate this. I was the kid that would like raise their hand in front of the class. I would volunteer to like, wipe the blackboards. Teacher's pet. I want the A plus. I want the gold stars. Like I really think, and maybe many of you listening can identify, like I really rolled that part of my mannerism into my identity at a very young age. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about that today, I think. But I grew up in New Jersey, and from there I spent all the way through high school in basically one town. And then from there, I went to Carnegie Mellon for undergrad, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I deeply adore Pittsburgh. Um, it's where I met my husband. And then for a while, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. So in Bethesda, Rockville, D.C., while I was working at the NIH. I was doing research at the NIH while I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life. So at this point, like I had considered medicine, but I also didn't know if I loved medicine. I didn't know what I would want to ever do. It felt like one of those sure paths that I think a lot of us, we want a path forward. Like, what am I going to do next? And I think it had been drilled into my brain at a very young age, like some level of grad school. Like it was just one of those things, like you do some
Right.
level of grad school, it's just what you do. I never even questioned that. And so I think that was a time period while I was working at the NIH that I was trying to decide medical school, research, something totally different. I made the decision to go to medical school, and my husband got a job out in San Francisco. So I came to California for medical school. So it was one of those things, like every 4 years, I basically moved until I felt like, I became a grown adult. And then
Right.
I came back to New Jersey actually for residency. So I decided in undergrad, sorry, not undergrad, in medical school, I did a couple of rotations in OBG as an OBGYN. And I mean, I think and I discovered this actually along the way. I've always been very compelled to serve women. And I think
Hmm.
that it came up even in my volunteer work when I was in DC. So it's not surprising actually that I chose to become an OBGYN. But I came back to New Jersey for residency, and yeah, that's like kind of been my roll around the United States.
I love it. And I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of times when I have guests on and they say it was always kind of just, it was expected that we went to a higher, higher
yeah,
level, whether it was,
hmm
your culture or where it
hmm
was, you obviously were good in school. Carnegie Mellon is, an excellent university. And so
yeah,
when people, and I find this, and it's always interesting for me because people,
yeah,
that listen know that school was really tough for me because of my dyslexia, but
yeah,
I was really, really good
yeah,
at sports. Like, so that's where I
yeah,
excelled.
yeah,
And so I didn't hate school. I just didn't really
hmm
super enjoy sitting in the class and
yeah,
learning in that
right,
aspect. I loved asking people questions and being curious about people's lives and what people
yes,
did and how things
yeah,
work. I was always that kid, but sitting at a desk and just having someone
yeah,
talk to me and teach that way, I was like, this is awful. Like, I don't want to go
yes,
any further than I have to. I did choose to go to
yeah,
college. There's many people, that will say to me, I wouldn't probably have gone to school if I really struggled as much, but because of my athletics, I wanted to go to that next step. And I was a driven
yes,
kid and proved to myself, wait, I can do
yeah,
this. And everyone, that is where I started studying communications and realized, wait, I actually am good at school. It's just not the
yes,
fundamental, like the way you're taught at public
yeah,
school kind of thing.
yeah,
So the fact
yeah,
that you were like, let me explore, let me see what I love
yeah,
is really cool that you didn't just take that and say, okay, I'm just going to keep going and keep
yeah,
going and just get a degree, but you really did kind of introspectively sit down and say,
hmm
what do I love to do? And I don't know that everyone
yeah,
does that, which is
yeah,
interesting. So do you think that
yeah.
your parents gave you a little bit of a like a platform to explore? It was okay in your family to explore, or where do you think you got that?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. My parents were always very open to me exploring. I think that they did want me to love the career I chose, but at the same time, it was very narrow. Like,
Hmm.
we want you to love it, but also like these are the options that are good. And
Right.
I think actually speaking to your point, what's interesting is like, yes, I went to a really good school and went to medical school and residency, but here's what's interesting. I I love learning, but I didn't love learning. And I think what's fascinating for me, and I only am noticing now as a coach, because I coach high achieving moms, I think that it's helped me really start to see that I thought I should be a certain way. And so I spent many, many years of my life trying to conform to being that good girl who gets the A, gets the gold star.
Right.
And I thought that meant that I had to go down this route. And I think what a lot of us do is we kind of convince ourselves, and that's definitely what I did. I think I definitely convinced myself, even when I decided to go to medical school, to be honest, I don't know that I should have like necessarily chosen that, right? I just chose
Hmm.
it because it felt like in the moment, I didn't know that there was a world of options. I never really saw the world in that way. I was like, okay, there's like these two or three options. And like, because I'm very used to historically, I want the next step. I'm a very like, give me the multiple choice test, give me
Right.
the next thing. Like, I'll just do step one, step two, step three. Medical school just seemed like the next natural step for me. And it just happened to be that I fell in love with the field of, obstetrics and gynecology. But if I had not, there was really nothing else that I truly loved about medicine, which is so fascinating. Like, I happened to fall in love with that, but I don't know that choosing medicine was really coming from the cleanest place, to be really
Right.
honest.
Right. Now, if you don't mind
Yeah.
me asking, what were your parents? What were their professions?
So my dad is a computer engineer. He went to, one of the best colleges in India because he was just so brilliant. And I think that was also part of it for me growing up. Like, my dad was just on a pedestal in terms of how smart and intelligent he was. And I always wanted to be like him and impress
Hmm.
him in a sense. And
Right.
my mom, for most of my life, was a stay-at-home mom. And when I was in high school, and me and my brother were like now off in school, she was at home all day. She was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something more. And she just decided at that point to get educated. She took a course and she also started to do computer programming. And I mean, amazing. I mean, my mom has such tenacity to be able to do that as a grown adult, to go back
Hmm.
to school. And I mean, she pushed herself and so now, yeah, so they're both computer programmers. There's no physicians in my family. Me and my brother's also now a physician. So me and my brother were the first in our immediate family to go to medical school.
Okay, so that's interesting. But I love
Yeah,
that you saw your
yeah,
mom at an age where she
yeah,
was like, well, I want to do more. And so I think that,
yeah,
as you grew, and so tell us a little bit about, I mean, because
yeah,
tell us what the unstoppable mom brain is. I mean, I know you have a
yeah,
podcast. Anyone that,
yeah,
is listening right now is like, wait, I want to learn a little bit more. You can go to
yeah,
Priyanka's profile here on Fireside and you can get the,
yeah,
unstoppable mom brain, but you can also see it here in the scroll and it will be
yeah,
it's on every social. So know that,
yeah,
you guys can find her there, but take us through a little bit of that.
yeah. A lot of what it is, it kind of just speaks to a lot of the first part of my life. I would say the majority of my life, up until the last few years, as I was sharing, like I've always been a very in the box kind of person. Like, give me some rules, give me some strategies, and I'm going to go out and get the gold star. I'm going to get the A plus. I'm going to go do really well. And I've really defined a lot of my success with these external parameters, which, not surprisingly, I think many of us do. Many of us do this. And I would say it was after residency. I had both my kids. So my kids are now 7 and 4. My daughter was about 7 months, my second. And at this point, I was about 200 pounds. And my relationship with the scale has always been not exactly contentious, but not exactly loving, to put it very frankly.
Hmm.
And I think that I very distinctly remember this memory. I was driving to the office, and I loved my office, my practice, my patients, adored them. But I remember I was driving to the office. My daughter's 7 months. At this point, I was still nursing and breastfeeding, so I was pumping while driving. How many of you, if
Right.
you're a mom, you know what I'm saying? If you have ever nursed or pumping while driving, they have these amazing contraptions nowadays. You just plug it into your car and drive. So I was pumping while driving to work, and I was 200 pounds. And I remember thinking, like, what is going on? I felt so deeply frustrated because I had a very, what I like to call good on life paper, like a supportive partner and 2 kids who are healthy and a practice that I love and a job that I truly feel purposeful in. I loved, again, being an OBGYN. My patient I love, but there was a sense in me that just felt heavy. I felt like this frustration that, like, I've worked too hard in my life and I have this one life to live, that I'm not feeling great. And I think that that was actually the time that I stumbled onto a podcast and I discovered the world of coaching and how, I used to be that person, again, because I'm such a planner, like, give me the spreadsheets, give me the apps, and I'll log all the points and the calories. And yet it just never stuck. It never worked. And a lot of it is because I really felt heavy in my mind. I felt really just like a lot of, I'm working so hard. I don't get enough fun. I don't have enough pleasure. And not very surprisingly, I went to food to create that for myself. And I think that that was
Right.
really my journey into coaching and challenging a lot of my old paradigms, like getting a lot of getting validation from external sources had to change. And that was probably my biggest work. I started finding myself with my patients, especially my patients that would come there, like between the ages of, I would say, like 35 to 50. They would want me to check their hormones always. Low
I
libido.
just actually got I just got
Yep.
my my hormones checked today.
Yes.
I actually
And it's
just had
not
blood work
surprising.
today.
It's not surprising. Like, and this, I feel deep love for my patients that would come with this. They'd say the 2 biggest complaints. One is I have low libido. They'd have a baby and, like, I don't have any drive.
Right.
And then the other one would be I can't lose weight. So check my hormones. And I get why
Right.
we do that. Like, I feel so much compassion because we're like, we want a reason. I want some reason for why I have a
Right.
low libido, can't lose the weight, where's my fatigue? I have all of these complaints, and we want a reason. And let me tell you, it's the hardest and also the best news that it's not your hormones. Usually, can't say never, but it's not usually your hormones, it's usually your brain. And it's the hardest news to hear because it means, like, now we get to take responsibility, but it's also the best because I promise you it means you can go change it. And I found myself starting to coach my patients in our annual visits. Like, I'm doing their exam and I'm
Right.
talking to them about their life. And that was when I realized, like, I just feel so compelled to coach my clients, to coach my patients, that, I think that this is something that I want to do full time, which is when I decided to become a entrepreneur, which was not the step by step ABCD route at all. It's been the biggest, hardest, best journey of my life, harder than medical school for sure. And I started the Unstoppable Mom Brain really with the intention of teaching my audience, showing the universe of women that will ever listen to me in their ears that really their brains, their mom brains, are not the reason that's holding them back. So many times I hear mom brain as though their mom brain is
Right.
a reason that they're failing at something. I would hear it as a physician at their postpartum visit, like, oh, I forgot my son's report card, or I forgot like the meeting with the teacher. Mom brain. We do this as a society, and I was
Mm.
like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Your mom brains, I promise you, is your greatest asset when you learn how to utilize her. And so that's where that whole journey began.
Right. No, so interesting. And it's funny. Because
Yeah.
my friend said, why are you getting your hormones checked? And I said, well, I'm going to be 49. I just want to have a baseline. There's
Yeah.
nothing going on that I'm like, wait, I
Yeah.
think that there's an issue. I just want to get a baseline because I know my mom went
Yeah.
through menopause early. And so I just kind of want to
Yeah.
see where things are just because I'm curious.
Yes.
It's more because I'm curious just to
Absolutely.
feel like I want to see where it is
Yeah.
and then, go.
Yeah.
So it's funny. But it's just funny that I did that today. I was like, oh, wait, I have my appointment
Yeah.
this morning. So
There you
I
go.
love that you did that. And I think it's really important for people to hear that as a physician, you were struggling with yourself, but then you were talking
Yes.
to your patients. And so I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do that because even with my coaching
Yeah.
that I do, my consulting with
Yeah.
people about how to
Yeah.
tell their story and what to do,
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
it's really funny because sometimes I'll be like, wait, I need to take my own advice in that. I'm not taking my own advice here.
Yes.
And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people do that when they're coaching and
Yes.
consulting people. So when
Yeah.
did you decide to jump full in? Because I mean, do you still
Yeah.
practice? Are you still a
No, I
practicing
stopped.
physician?
I stopped practicing clinically, and I'm maintaining my board certification, but I am now just full time entrepreneur. Actually, also speaking, I'll get to that in 1 second. But one of the things that you just said, which is so important, is I wasn't taking my own advice. Like as a
Yeah.
physician who knows the science, I understood the science of how our bodies work and how we hold on to fat and how you eat a calorie and how it turns into like stored energy on your body. But a lot of it isn't just that I wasn't taking my own advice, it's that the advice we are given, particularly when it comes to weight loss, is often wrong. So
Mm.
we understand the science, but the advice we are given, I think the most common one is like calories in, calories out. Or like, I think that's the most common one, right? Like count the calories
Right.
and have a calorie deficit. If you have a calorie deficit, you'll lose weight. Yeah, that makes sense at a scientific level. But what we start doing, and I think this was why for so many years, I was always up and down. I'd lose a little bit of weight, give it back, lose a little bit of weight. Because while I could log every point in calorie, sure, I could lose the weight, but I did not want to log every calorie I put into my mouth, every point in macro. Like, did I want to live
Yeah.
my life based on a spreadsheet? No. So not surprisingly, like I knew the advice, but there was something missing in that advice that I think that was the reason that I think so many women, they can do it while they're willing to count every point, but it didn't last. It wasn't sustainable. And I think that what I really like to help my audience see is that, yes, there are, of course, healthy foods and good quality macros and good quality calories and points that you can consume, of course. And also, what if we didn't need a calculator to lose weight ever again? Like, what would be the impact of that? Whenever I share this, I sometimes people look at me like, Priyanka, that's too good to be true. And I'm like, it's not too good to be true because you have to work hella hard to figure this out. Like, I had to work many years to learn this as a skill that I can now distill and teach my clients. So it's not too good to be true because you have to work to unlearn diet brain. I call it diet brain, like the calculator, like I've tried every app, all the apps I have tried. You have to go through diet, like you have to unlearn diet brain. And then what I teach my clients really is how do you intimately befriend your body? She's telling you in real time when she's hungry and not. I think that to me, it's that piece that is missing from the advice. So that was a little tangent. I had to share that because
No, but
I wasn't
yeah.
taking my own advice because it wasn't complete advice.
And also, I mean, I think a lot of women also don't see there's genes that play into this as well. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's it's like such an important thing where
Yeah.
someone you might have a friend or a sister or an aunt that you're like, I don't understand. You had 4 kids and you went right back
Mm-hmm.
to a zero. This is my sister
Yep.
and I. It was always funny because
Yeah.
and I don't struggle with my weight, really never have. I was always been lucky,
Yes.
but I put a lot of
Yeah.
weight on when I was pregnant. I put on
Yeah.
60 pounds. I mean, I was a big woman,
Yeah.
but I knew I was going to get it. Like I didn't stress because I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
how my body's reacting. And then
Right.
afterwards, I'm going to lose it because it took a year to put on. I was never the unrealistic that I was like, oh my God, I got to, go
Yeah.
crazy. And I also knew I was having more kids. So I was like, I'm not going to kill
Right.
myself to get back to the body
Right.
to get pregnant again,
Right.
because this is obviously how my body's handling it. And I
Right.
remember people saying, oh my gosh, your sister went right back to a zero. And I was like, yeah, that's just
Mm.
weird. My sister
Yeah.
would say, that's not fair. It's not
Yeah.
weird, but she can't
Yeah.
put on weight. And sometimes people will say like,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah.
you're so lucky, but it's not. I mean, she has a struggle. She has to
Mm.
watch like and make sure she's eating enough healthy
Yeah.
and fatty foods because she cannot, because
Right.
her metabolism is so crazy. And she
Right.
has 4 kids and you would never know it. But
Yeah.
there's times where she's like, this is
Yeah.
not health, it's not great. So,
Yeah. And I think
sometimes
that
people don't
there's a
think
lot
about
to be
that.
said about that. Like, I specifically coach women to live a lighter life and to lose weight while they do that. That's one piece of it. But there are so many other pieces that affect us. Like you can be exactly what you're describing. Like forget like
Yeah.
trying to lose weight. Like some people need to gain weight. And I think that this is why sometimes weight loss can be a very sensitive topic and it can be a trigger topic because of this topic. Like the goal, and especially again like with the work that I do, is never ever putting out the message that you have to lose weight.
Right.
What I really want every woman, every human listening to this, is to know that you can live in a body in your forever home in a way that feels delightful to you. What is that? What is that? That could be 1 pound, it could be 100 pounds, it could be 7 pounds. If we just took away everything that, every magazine and movie, and forget even mid-range BMI. So as a physician, right, I would talk about the BMI scale and being health, like what's healthy from like a medical standpoint. If we just take a pause on that, and if
Hmm.
you got to be the authority of your body, where do you want to live? And I think that, a lot of the people that I talk to, of course, it's weight loss, but it can be either way. And there's a struggle on both sides for
Right.
sure.
And that you have to be, and that's what I always say a lot as
Yeah,
well, because you have to be comfortable in your body. And if
absolutely.
you might be like, someone might say, oh, that person's overweight, but they can do
Yeah,
everything and they're comfortable and they're healthy. I mean, it's about
that's
health. I
right.
mean, it's about health and
Yeah,
how you feel. But, some
yeah,
people will, and it's so important because I think our society is always about, and especially in certain cultures, right? It's about being
yeah,
thin and,
yeah,
being, wafy. And this is, and if you have an
yeah,
athletic body, and I'll remember,
yeah.
I always remember my kids are definitely more on the athletic side. So, and then they were
Hmm.
shorter when they were little. So it was really funny. If you
Hmm.
looked at their numbers, we were always
Yeah,
like 80% weight and 10% height. And if you
yes,
saw that, I mean, the doctors would be like, your kids are solid muscle. And I'm like, no,
right,
I'm not worried about it. Like that's how I
right.
was. It is okay. But that is, society
Yeah,
really does put that into people's heads. And it's not fair because
yes.
again, you can be
It's
overweight
not.
in
Yeah,
someone else's eyes, but you're comfortable in
yeah,
your body and you can wear a bikini because you're comfortable and you like the way you look
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
healthy. That's again the number
yeah,
one thing. And you're healthy.
yeah,
You shouldn't have
yeah.
to change because the society says. So I love that you said that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
again, with my sister would be like, I want to put weight on. I don't feel comfortable
yeah,
in my body. I'm too thin and I'm
yeah,
trying to put weight
yeah.
on. And so it
Right.
is one of those things. And so
Yeah.
I think it's
And it's one
when,
more, it also speaks to like, how again, like this is not just women, this is our society is so like married to external metrics, to the number that a piece of paper or a graph. And I mean, this is like when we talk about like how do you lose weight? So many people are so used to again counting points and calculating or downloading plans off of the internet. Let me download a meal plan, like the PDF of what that person did. We're so used to external metrics that we have become so disconnected from the one home that we are literally living in every moment of every day. And I think that it is drilled into us at a very young age. And I think that that's unfortunate. And what we get to
Mhm.
do, kind of, I think, even in this conversation is, of course, it makes a lot of sense that you've been really married to the calculator, but what would it be like? How would it feel for you to, like, it's almost like I remember, for me, when I was thinking about coaching and understanding, oh wait, I can lose weight without this app and these points. You had to like pry the app out of my hands because I was so used to getting feedback from a graph. Like
and that's
feedback.
also your personality too, right? So it like fed
Yes.
even more
Oh,
because yeah.
absolutely. I want like, where's the multiple choice? Like, where is my answer? Did I get it right or wrong? I mean, it's one of the biggest things that I coach my clients on is, getting it right and wrong. And like, yesterday's wrong has nothing to do with today's right. So, I mean, this is like literally one of the biggest things that's been coming up in my coaching group recently is we are human, which means we are going to get it wrong. You better believe we are going to
Yes.
be getting it wrong many, 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 many times. And I can also tell you that every single time I got it wrong is the time that I quit and the time that I would gain a couple pounds and that turned into a week, a month, a season. I'll start again in 2023, January 1st, the next birthday. Okay, maybe next Monday is when I'll start. It's because we make imperfection a problem rather than an opportunity to glean incredible wisdom. It is like literally this untraining that has to happen when you coach with me. It's like it is unlearning that has to happen so that we can start gleaning wisdom from our actual bodies, not just a graph
And it's
or a
so
data
true.
point.
Right.
Yes.
And it really is, I mean, it is super true the fact
Yeah.
that um it's a personality thing and some people are like
Yes.
that. But again, it is like,
Yeah.
okay, it's the new year, we have to do this. And it's really just
Yeah.
double checking with yourself. Do I feel comfortable with myself? Am I healthy? Do I
Yeah.
feel healthy? And how can I, move forward? So I love all that you're saying. So I do want to take it back
Yeah.
for a second
Yes.
so
Yes.
for
Yeah.
like any of my entrepreneurs that are in the,
Oh,
audience
yes.
are like, okay,
Yeah.
she went from a doctor to an
Yes.
entrepreneur. Like,
Yes.
what did that look like, and how was that?
Yeah.
How long did you do both? Like, was one a
Yeah.
side hustle for a little while? If you can take us through
Right.
that journey a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is such a good story. So for me, I started coaching while I was a physician. I was going through my own journey, my own transformation at the time. And along the way, I realized that I was developing my own intellectual property. So while I was taking the coaching, that I was receiving, I was also creating my own process along the way. And I found myself coaching my patients, which is when I decided I really want to do this. I want to help other high achieving working moms specifically. And there was probably about a year or so, a year, maybe about 9 months that I was doing both at the same time. And I had no intention. So when I started coaching, I had no intention of leaving medicine. I had no intention at the time to not practice being an OBGYN. And part of this is because I worked really hard to become an OBGYN.
Right.
Can we say decades? I don't know.
Yeah.
That feels like an exaggeration, but it felt like decades of college and medical school and residency and like all the hoops that I went through to become an OBGYN. I never had any plan to not practice. Yet there also came a point when I felt like my impact, I felt like what was just calling to me to spend my time, energy, and bandwidth was in coaching. And so it was a very difficult decision for me because I think it was particularly difficult because I didn't hate being a physician. I think a lot of times you see physicians leave medicine or they become an entrepreneur, they do something different because they're burning out because of the state of the way medicine is nowadays. It's
Right.
very common to see a burnout with physicians. It wasn't that. It was because something else was calling to me more. So I loved doing what I was doing, but this was just, it lit me up in a way that I had not been lit up, I think, my whole life. Like, I think what I was describing even earlier in this conversation was I chose medicine because it felt like the right next thing to do.
Hmm.
And within that, I fell in love with being an OBGYN. But what I think the entrepreneurial journey opened up for me was this creativity that I didn't know I had. I didn't know I had this little, I don't know if I want to call it a fire. It feels kind of cliche to say that, but like I had this thing inside that I had to get out. I needed more humans to know about it, particularly high achieving working moms, that there's a better way. And I felt like I think my reach, my story, what I want to share with the universe, what I want for more women could only happen when I dedicated more of my time to being an entrepreneur full time. And so there came a point, and it was such a heartbreaking conversation with my practice. I still remember I got on the phone with the two senior partners. I was bawling, I was
Right.
crying because you know, and I think even at the time I probably told myself like maybe this isn't forever. Like maybe I'll come back. Like you know, maybe I'll come back in a year. I don't know. I think I
Right.
didn't fully decide, but um, I felt a lot of, I don't know if the word is like sadness or even grief. I think I felt grief
And
actually at the
was there
idea.
guilt? Was there guilt?
There was a little bit of guilt at the idea of, I could be serving women in this other way, and I I did feel some guilt, but at the same time, I think what had been happening in my personal journey was learning to trust myself, learning to trust my intuition, learning to be confident, even if this was a mistake. Here's the biggest thing. Even if me leaving that practice and even if me becoming an entrepreneur was a mistake, was I willing to have my own back? Was I willing to have my own back, even if it all went to crap? Like, even if the whole thing was a big, like, big crazy mistake, was I willing to have my own back, or would I beat myself up over it? And the answer was, of course not, because of the work I had been doing on myself and the work I had been taking my own brain through. So the guilt was really short lived because I reminded myself, like, we have this agreement with ourselves. We don't treat ourselves like crap anymore. We are like delighting in every mistake that comes our way. Let's go. And I
Well,
think that
yeah,
also I had confidence that if I ever wanted to go back, I could, because I
right.
had those
Well,
skills.
because and then you have, like, as you said, you're keeping up your certification. But the other thing that I
Yeah.
think is important that you said that I want
Yeah.
everyone to listen to again, and we
Yeah.
talk about this on all my shows, is the
Yeah.
failure. And I've actually been on a
Yeah.
podcast about just failure. Like, and it's funny
Yes.
because I have never, because of having dyslexia and failing so
Yeah.
many times, I don't look at failure as a bad thing. I actually look at as, okay, what did I learn from that? And I did that in a
Yes.
very early age in my life. So even when I was younger, and I don't know that I realized I was actually doing that, but that is how I live life. If I make a
Right.
mistake, and we all make mistakes, I know, okay, I'm going to learn something from that. And actually a
Yeah.
mistake that's it's going to bring me to a better place because I learned from it. And so I always,
Yeah.
anytime I'm like, damn it, okay, let me think about that. I need to now think about what am I going to learn from it? And sometimes, to my own
Right.
fault, when I do make a mistake, sometimes it's just a mistake, right? There's no reason. I
Right.
always have to look for the
Right.
reason. Like, why
Right.
did I make that
Right.
mistake? What can I learn from it? And there's times where it's like,
Right.
I didn't learn anything from that. So I wonder where that's going to take me. But
Hmm.
that's how I always look at things. And it's really
Yeah.
important for the listeners to think about that, men and
Yeah.
women, that if you're
Hmm.
going out of your comfort zone, if you're doing
Yeah.
things that are not, that you're not, you don't think you're good at, or that you're
Yeah.
like nervous about, and
Yeah.
you're going to make mistakes, and you have to let yourself. And I have so
Absolutely.
many clients, so many people that I
Yes.
consult that are so nervous about and it's just talking to them through the
Hmm.
mistakes. And it's interesting because
Yes.
it's, even my kids to this day, when they make mistakes, I'm like, okay, good. They're learning. Like, everything is a life
Yes.
lesson from a mistake. But it's
Right.
important because if you don't make
Yeah.
mistakes early on in your life,
Yeah.
life is going to be harder. One of my sons
Oh
is
yeah.
dyslexic, and it's
Yeah.
interesting seeing him when he makes a mistake. He literally bounces right back up, dusts it off, and doesn't even think about it. Where my other two
Mm.
might hesitate a little bit and are like, "Oh, that stung." Especially my
Right.
youngest, who doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. And watching
Right.
her, I'm like, kind of
Yeah.
praying, like at night, let her make more
Yeah.
mistakes because she's young and she needs to learn this, because I
Yeah.
don't want it to
Yeah.
do it when she's in her 20s. Because
Right.
when you're in your 20s is when, like, when people cannot handle it. And then you've seen society,
Hmm.
especially in generations where I feel like when we were
Definitely.
younger, it was okay to make mistakes. And then there was this
Definitely.
generation that it was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's protect them from their mistakes. And you see that now,
Yeah.
that there are a certain
Yeah.
age that they don't know how to handle it. So it's really important
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah. And I mean, that's such a skill that I mean, you learned it early. And I would say that so much of my audience is having to learn it now. So it's like, especially when you decide that you want to lose weight, the way that I teach it, learning how to glean wisdom from imperfection is literally one of the stepping stones to create that dream ideal weight that you want to live at. And what I always also like to kind of validate and normalize for a lot of my audience and my clients is the perfectionism was a coping strategy that you created in your younger years and it worked well for you. There's a reason. I think of perfectionism, or more importantly, avoiding imperfection, as a coping strategy. It was just a strategy your little mind created at the age of 5 or 6 that worked well for you for 20, 30, 40 years. And here we are saying this ninja skill that you have of perfectionism and avoiding imperfection, which works probably really well in your work life, You're probably that person at work that's like hitting all the marks and like getting the promotions and, doing all the things right, quote unquote, right. We are saying that that ninja skill in your real life is just not a ninja skill when it comes to like actually how you want to treat yourself, how you actually want to be. And becoming an entrepreneur is a masterclass in itself in imperfection.
Right.
It is its own university. And I've been to, I've done enough
Hmm.
college, but I feel like this, becoming an entrepreneur, I think that that is the biggest thing for me to remember, that nervousness and doubt and inadequacy and all of that, all of those uncomfortable emotions are going to be with me along the ride. They're like with me in the car. I'm not going to let them program my GPS. What I used to do historically is I would feel nervous, and nervous starts like programming my GPS. Like, whoa, let's stop. Like, maybe let's not do this. This is scary. And that's just my, my most primitive brain protecting me. What I had to learn how to do through coaching was, okay, I can normalize and validate. Of course, I feel nervous. I've never done this before. And nervous, like, let's get you comfortable in the back seat. Here's a throw pillow. I love you. And you're not touching my GPS. Thank you. Like, we're going to
Right.
have, something else driving us, because otherwise we would just stay stuck. And I think that that's what I did for a very long time. I think so many of us do. We hold back our dreams, in business and in weight loss. It's exactly the same thing. We hold back because we just want complete certainty. There's no such thing. Just
No
like
such
welcome
thing.
uncertainty, and it's not a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, how old are your children now?
My four.
And when was it that you left the practice and went full time into
My
this?
so it's been about, let's see, about almost 2 years. It's been about almost 2 years, just under 2 years.
Okay, so this is what's really interesting, and I love,
Yeah.
because was there any other entrepreneurs in your family, like any, like aunts, uncles, cousins? Did you
No.
have a neighbor?
I mean, I might have had none that I knew. Like, I might
Right.
have had maybe some uncle, is an entrepreneur. A lot of my family lives in India, so like my family here is really my immediate family, and I have some cousins that live far off that we wouldn't see much, but no,
So, and because this is one of
no
my favorite,
entrepreneurs in my family.
it's one of my favorite things to kind
Yeah,
of dive into, because there
yeah,
are definitely, I have guests that are entrepreneurs, and their mom was an entrepreneur, their dad was an
yes,
entrepreneur, a
yes,
grandfather, it was in their blood, right? They were just
yeah,
born to be an entrepreneur. They were built that
yes.
way. And then I have had very few that
Mhm.
kind of happened upon it, right? Just happened upon it, and it just was their path, and then they took it. Very, very few that didn't have it. But one of the things, one of my, and it's so, her company is called LaBelle Bump, and it's actually a really interesting story, because she started this maternity line, but she was in corporate America, and she always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And she's like, I don't know why I wanted to be an entrepreneur. There was no entrepreneurs in her family, she thought. And then as we were kind of going into the story, she goes, wait, you know what? And we were past already had asked that question. We were like on a whole different thing. And she's like, I have to go back. There was a time when I was young, and my dad owned a store with our neighbor. And then I just literally saw this light. She's like, and we used to go to dinners as a family, and my dad would create, and it was like fun, and we would dance around, and it was all this. And I said to her, okay, so I have a question for you. She's like, but I was really young, so I don't really remember it. And I said, how was your dad? Because he was a professor. I said, when your dad walked through the door,
Mhm.
how did he come across versus how he was as the store owner? And he was only a store owner
Yeah,
for a very short time.
yeah,
And she went, oh my gosh. And I said, you've been chasing a feeling. You wanted to be an
yeah.
entrepreneur, and it's not because of memory. And that's what a lot of people don't sometimes
Right,
realize. And this is what I really help people connect when I'm
right,
consulting them about their story. Because
right.
a lot of times we think of a memory as a memory. That's like a story. I remember that. But there's so many things in
Mhm.
our childhood that are feelings, whether
Mhm.
it's good or bad. I mean, some people
Absolutely.
have some
Yeah,
tragic feelings that they don't remember the actual
right,
details, but
right.
others have very positive feelings, and they
Yeah.
don't realize that that's what they've been chasing. So what will be really
Mm.
interesting for you to think about your kids, because your kids
Yeah.
are young, especially your youngest, probably won't
Yeah.
remember you walking
Right.
in as the OBGYN versus the
Right.
entrepreneur. Your older
Right.
one might a little bit, like, there might be
Yeah.
a little thing he might not remember.
Right.
Is it a boy, the first one, your
Yeah. My
first?
my older one's my son, and my younger's my daughter.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
would be really
Cool.
interesting to see
Mm.
as he grows what the path is, and if
Oh yeah.
your entrepreneur like journey creates other entrepreneurs in your life? Like
Oh,
as you
that
get
would be
older, like great.
just, yeah, so fascinating to think of it. Like, I've never even considered that. And you even speaking about like messaging as a child, I remember my memory of being an entrepreneur was like shaky. That's unsure. That's why like so much of
Right.
what I had learned as a kid was like, make sure you go to grad school, make sure you have a guaranteed career, because there is a lot of ups and downs with being an entrepreneur. And here's the thing, there's truth in that. There
Mhm.
is. And so, like, why would anybody ever want to be an entrepreneur? It's if you feel deeply called. I mean, really deeply
Deep,
called to do
deep,
something.
and it's the
Yeah.
creativity, as you said. I think it's a
Yeah.
very creative brain that is okay. Like I actually can live in chaos. Like it, I actually
Yeah.
thrive sometimes. And when things are too like, when things are too neatly, I have to create chaos.
Right.
And it's actually funny because I've
Right.
actually, as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, things were just so good that I had to like adopt another dog, or I had to, I
Right.
need like
Right.
that to kind of to drive me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love, there's like a quote, and it basically is like chaos is only loved by the, and I forget that, I'm not going to say it, but it's like literally, it's like brave girl, chaos is only loved by the
Mm-hmm.
strong, not the
Mm-hmm.
weak. And it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do very well when things
Yeah.
are a little bit, a little ruffled. When things are too perfectly
Yeah.
tied,
Yeah.
I get bored. I really do. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
There we
this is
go.
snoozy.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I was made to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I know that, you know,
Right.
even when
Yeah.
I was in the corporate world, I worked in alternative advertising. So every day was
Mm.
different. You know, it was never like, you
Mm.
know, A to B and kind of thing, or A to Z. So I think it's really cool to see,
Mm-hmm.
as your children grow and as generations
Yeah.
grow, if your
Yeah.
experience creates
Yeah.
more entrepreneurs in your world.
We're gonna have to talk in like 20 years and
I
like
know.
come back and see what they do. I think it's so interesting, and I think actually this kind of brings up for me like what's the messaging that I want to give my kids, you know?
Hmm.
So even for work ethic and how to be a kind person, like the things that my kids are talking about in school, it's like how do you be kind and use your kind words and all of these things that we learn about. I think that of absolutely my personal journey from being a physician to becoming an entrepreneur, specifically to do what I'm doing, is has completely transformed the way that I parent.
Hmm.
And actually, what's interesting is one of the biggest things that changed because of coaching is my relationship with my son. I know he's only 7, but I will tell you, when I first started coaching, this is when I was the 200-pound range. Um, I had many thoughts about him, many thoughts. I'm like, can he just be easier and different?
Right.
And he was like the kid. He would be the kid that like can be maybe called prickly, like prickly on the outside. He'd be the kid that's a little bit different, that is not playing by himself, and all the other kids and the moms are doing their thing, and here I am, like trying to like make this kid really. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I wanted him to be different than he was. And when we think about like where did my heaviness come from, not surprisingly, I was trying to make things, people, my life different than what it was. I was not accepting him. And it breaks my heart now, but also I'm so grateful to myself for seeing that and being willing to open my brain and honestly be
Hmm.
deeply vulnerable in my own coaching to explore that and change that. And
Hmm.
what's so crazy is the moment that I started to see him as he was, see myself at even at 200 pounds, like see ourselves as we are, something just started to shift in our relationship. And it's changed the trajectory of, I think, our whole family. Absolutely.
And that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see his feelings, but because you could also
Yeah.
go, because I sometimes think with I started my entrepreneur like when my kids were older, right? And so
Yeah.
half of the time they're like, "Wait, what are you doing, Mom? You're at the Super Bowl. This is really cool." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I've been talking to you guys about this. This is my job and how
Right.
I created this."
Right.
And they do know what I do, but it's just when you have teens,
Yeah.
obviously your life is not as important as theirs in
That's
their
right.
mind. But
Yeah.
I've had other guests come on. That said, they didn't want to be the entrepreneur that they are. They pushed everything
Yeah.
back. They wanted to go into corporate because they had parents
Mm-hmm.
that were entrepreneurs and they
Mm.
hated the ups and downs. And both parents were entrepreneurs.
Mm.
They hated the ups and
Right.
downs. They hated that sometimes they were, like the money was always coming in and other times it wasn't. They hated the
Mm.
unbalance.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
they then went into and became an entrepreneur, but they did things different and they
Mm.
actually
Right.
became more steady, which is
Right.
interesting. So it is, and having 3 kids, We all
Yeah.
think that we just want our kids to be happy, healthy,
Yeah.
kind, hardworking,
Right.
confident, that's
Yeah.
what we want for our kids. And obviously the list can go on. But as parents, we think,
Hmm.
okay, sometimes, and especially now that I'm in the late, stage of teens,
Yeah.
you just take a breath and you're like, okay, everything that I did when they were young, and I loved staying home and being a mom. I chose to stay home and
Hmm.
be a mom. And so, but it's interesting to see, okay, like, when you're
Yeah.
creating this person, you can really mess them up if you
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
your crap together. And
Right.
even if you have your crap together,
Oh
there's
yeah.
going to be something that they are like, oh, I wish you did
Yeah.
this different, or oh, I wish this
Yeah.
was different. So it's never an easy thing. And so
Right.
when you follow a passion, when you follow something that you love and you're happy and
Yeah.
excited about it, it
Yeah.
definitely is shown. But then also when you're trying to create a business, depending where
Yeah.
you are in your life, whether you have support, whether you can be, or you have to be the sole breadwinner, or you can do this
Hmm.
as a okay, I'm
Yeah.
building. It's a very different dynamic that can be brought into a
Yeah.
house. So I think it's
And also, like,
very
I think
cool.
one of the things that you're kind of talking about, which speaks to a little bit of even what part of my work was when I went from being a physician to an entrepreneur, is that my identity is not my profession. What I
Right.
do, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also an OBGYN and I'm also a coffee lover and I'm also a mom and I'm also a wife. Like, none of those things are my identity. I think that sometimes, and this is again like some of those things that we just kind of throw around, like, oh, I wear many hats. I've said this myself. I wear many hats. That's not who I am. Who I am is way more than what I do. And I think that this is really the one thing that I want to really pass on to my kids, is that you know who they are as like just humans in their identity of themselves is just what they decide to tell themselves they are.
Yep.
I don't care what they want to go do, but if they can just be solid in that, I think that it just opens things up so much more. We stop boxing ourselves in. I did that for long enough. Like, oh, I am just someone who, like, even with weight loss, I'm just someone who loves food. I still am someone that will say, I'm a foodie. I just love food
Right.
so much. But let me tell you, we have to start changing and shifting our identities if we want to explode and create new results. I think that we get limited by sometimes these like self-inflicted labels that we give ourselves.
Yes, no, totally. So I would love for you to tell the listeners, where they can find you, how you do your coaching. So like if someone's out
Yeah.
there going, well, wait a second, I think I want to work with you.
Yeah.
What is do you do one-on-one? Are you doing group? If you can give people a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I have an intimate small group. It's called the Unstoppable Group. And there's many ways of really working with me and learning from me. First of all, I have my free podcast. So if this is speaking to you, then I strongly recommend you come and listen to Weight Loss for Unstoppable Moms and just start like getting this message into your ears and into your brains, because I promise you it's possible to live lighter now and lose weight feeling better along the way. And then if that speaks to you and if that is like just lighting you up, then I would love to see you in the Unstoppable group. It's a very intimate room. So I only work with a very small group. You can see everyone can see each other on one small Zoom screen. We meet live weekly coaching calls. I have a written coaching cafe. It's on Slack. If you're familiar with Slack, it's like a little private
Hmm.
community that I coach my clients on in between our coaching calls. And we have all kinds of fun together. It's the best group to be in. It's 6 months. So the way that I really like to help you all think about whether this work is for you is very simple. If you identify as a high achieving working mom who is just ready to be done with the struggle, like just ready to be done and ready to live lighter and ready to lose weight in a way that does not require a calculator, but you're like feeling like you want to live lighter, you absolutely belong in this room. And you can learn more at theunstoppablemombrain.com/group. I have all the information for when my next group is starting and how to join me. And I really, again, because it's such an intimate room, I meet with everyone via consult and we decide if we're a best fit. And you get to just decide if you want to be in this room or not.
That's great. So I have a couple questions with that.
Tell me, yeah.
So say someone is like, does it matter? Is there a certain amount of weight someone has to lose? Like say someone really doesn't
Yeah.
have to lose, they may be like,
Hmm.
struggling with 10 pounds, but it's not about the
Yeah.
weight. It's really about
Yes,
changing the mindset. Is that something that you
absolutely.
also do? Is it just about
Yeah.
weight loss? I mean, obviously it's not because you're
Right.
coaching them through
It's not.
things. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
We
right.
coach
So if
on,
someone's
yeah.
like,
So like
yeah,
literally I would say like with my clients, we coach on relationships, we coach on kids, we coach on time, we coach on weight loss, we coach on every part of your life that's leading you to feel heavy. So
right.
that's like very simply put. I've had clients that had to lose 5 pounds and I've had clients that have to lose over 50. I myself have lost over 60 pounds and it's with this process that I take my clients through. And I like to say that because I think that it's sometimes easy to say I have a process, but not be a product of your process. And I will share that whatever I ever put out into the universe is me being a product of my own process. And I think that that's important. So whether you have 5 pounds to lose or 60, 70, 80, it really doesn't matter. Will you lose 60 pounds in 6 months? No, unless you were really not being healthy about it, to be very honest, but you can lose a lot of weight in 6 months and then you have an opportunity and an invitation to renew. And the clients that renew with me, they become unstoppable alumni, and there's a whole community of my like unstoppable alumni that we get lifetime access to coaching calls and all kinds of fun things. So yeah, so really anyone that wants to lose even a little bit of weight or to maintain it with ease. So if you're someone that's like, you have 5 pounds to lose, but you've been like grit and grind, willpowering, trying to like hold on to the scale, then that's also an opportunity for you to do this work. And also, if you are someone that has found yourself really relying a lot on willpower and like muscling through plan after plan after plan, or it's like your motivation's high on Monday, it's gone by Friday, then I'm having a free masterclass that you can also come to that's happening in a little over a week. And you can get that. You can reserve your spot at theunstoppablemombrain.com/antidote, the antidote to willpower and weight loss. So you can come there too.
That's great. And I'm also like thinking
Yeah.
it could be the person that hits their goal weight, but then they gain 20 pounds and then they hit it
Oh, yeah.
again and gain. So like the
Oh, yeah.
yo-yo person as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely.
you're
Yeah.
teaching them to kind of live and not struggle with it, thinking about
Yeah.
trying to lose weight and always trying to lose weight, which I think is really
Exactly.
important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might be like, no, I can't tell you that, but did any of your patients become your
hmm
clients?
None of my patients have become my clients, but you know what's so sweet is my patients will DM me on Instagram.
Oh, I love
And
that.
then, when are
Right.
you coming back to the practice? Where are you? I miss you. Come back, please come back. And I mean, every single time I do feel a little emotional at that because I really do. I really do love my patients. But no, none of my patients have become my clients yet. I mean, maybe one day they will.
Well,
But
but also, as you
yeah,
said, you were really coaching them on the side anyway. So they probably got a
yeah,
lot of what your coaching
yeah,
clients would be doing
yeah,
regardless. So that's great.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much,
This has been
Priyanka, for
amazing.
coming. It's been great. And I know that there's people out there that are like, okay, and any of the guys that are listening to this now, this is because there was 1 second I was going to say, and then I was like, wait, if my husband brought this to me and I like, if I was in that
Yeah,
period, would I want that? I don't know. So
yeah,
any of the guys that are out there that are like, you know what, maybe my wife or maybe my mom or sister, or someone that might need Priyanka, just DM her. You can find her on social medias. You can also, if you can't and you want to ask me a
yeah,
question, I'm happy to send you along the way because she might be able to
yeah,
take you through of how to approach
yeah,
your wife or your mom or your sister in a way that's not like,
yeah.
hey, I think you need this, because not everyone
Yeah.
does.
I think it's like such an act of love though. Like, of course, you
Yes.
can always DM me on Instagram, The Unstoppable Mom Brain. You can find me there. But I think of it as such an act of love. If you see that someone would benefit from a resource, please give it to them. I think
Yeah.
that and I think that this can be a source of like, it depending on how your partner takes your input.
Right.
But for me, what I've always found is when it's coming from love and
Yes.
not manipulation, when it's coming from true love, I can tell you you can feel that. You can feel like, hey,
A
I
hundred
found this
percent.
awesome resource and this is for you. And what I will, and I share this all over the place, but when you really want something, like for my audience, they want to finally lose weight and live lighter. It's like the combination of both, because you can lose weight and not live lighter. When you want to lose weight and live lighter, you have to stop winging it. Wanting
Yes.
it is not enough. And I think that, if there's one message that I want anyone to hear this to know, it's like even from going from being a physician to an entrepreneur, any goal, any goal we have, any dream we have, I promise it's possible. You have to stop winging it. Wanting it isn't enough, and accepting yourself and befriending yourself along the imperfect journey.
I
It is
love that.
everything. Everything.
I love that. Well, we're going to end on that because that was gold.
Oh,
That
good.
was gold. Thank you again for joining Your Next Stop live here on Fireside. And you guys, if you have any questions, again, please come and ask. Please come and, find where Priyanka is. Go to the Unstoppable Mom Brain. You can find also on the podcast. This will all be in the show notes when this show goes out on all the podcast players, which will be sometime in November, probably towards the end, but you can get the replay here on Fireside at any time. And again, Priyanka, thank you so much for joining. And
This
I'm
was
excited
amazing. Thank you for
I'm
having
excited
me.
to follow you and to see what your kids do. I'm also really interested in
Oh,
that.
absolutely. Listen, I share about my kids. They're hilarious.
No, I love that. But to see if there's any entrepreneurs that come from what you started, I really think that's like